So recently I've been thinking about time and just how fast it's been going. It's a common experience for people to say as they get older, oh, like time's going by so quickly. And I've been thinking there's some ways to slow down or certain points of my life where I recognize that it's um, slower than other periods of my life. And one thing I've realized is you have to make every single day its own adventure. That's really the key point, right? Like that's sort of my motto I've adopted, something I've realized recently. You have to make every single day count. That's the best, probably the fastest way to slow down time down because if you look at every single day as its own little thing, right? Like its own little lifetime, you make the most of it and you're able to do more. A lot of people have New Year's resolutions and they mess up and they're like, oh, the year's done, right? Like, oh, this year's over. Um, on to the next year. That type of thinking is where I think people go wrong. They tend to think of time as an atomic unit in terms of years. Like, we have this year, and then this year, and then this year. Or even more so, like this month or this semester. You mess up here, then you always have the next month or the next semester to fix things up. But if you start thinking of time as atomic in terms of days, it really does change things. And that means, every single day doing something different, like reading a new book. If you walk a certain way to work or school, taking a different route. Maybe you try drawing for the first time. Or, recently what I've been doing, just trying out, making apps. I've been wanting to make an app for a long time. And I was like, you know what? I'll try it out this winter break. The really important thing is doing something different every single day, even if it's for 10, 15 minutes. Doesn't have to be much, right? It just has to be memorable. If you make every day the same, which is something that's very common, it's very monotonous, it just tends to blend all together. And then you can't really tell the time apart, right? If you're doing the same thing every single day for a week, the week kind of just mends together, like coagulates, and it's not really distinguishable from the rest of your life, right? Um, and another thing that helps with that is journaling, taking photos. That's something I've been doing recently. Because if you live your life and you don't really journal stuff, you kind of forget everything that's happened. I can look through my old journal entries and be like, oh wow, I've been to this place before, or look at these old photos, or look at my old entries, where I can see where I was in my life. And having different, journals and photos to reflect upon kind of slows time down in a way that you can see each day for what it is rather than, memory recollection of like, oh, this was 2026. You can see in front of you like every single day of 2026, right? And you're like, oh, this happened, that happened, whatever. Um, it's important to acknowledge that time is passing, right? I think people tend to get immersed in a game, for example. They play a game for like 2 hours in their free time, right? And they lose track of time because they're just playing and playing and playing, and time just seeps away, right? So it's important to acknowledge time once in a while, not obsessively checking the clock, but, once in a while looking at the clock, being like, it's 4 now, it's 5 now. How many hours do I have left in the day? Right? How much time have I spent doing a certain activity? And that makes me think about how a lot of people do a lot of, I call them dopaminergic activities, which is things that are just for dopamine. They don't really get you further in life. They sort of just give you, like pleasure for a moment or two. Playing games, eating junk food, watching Netflix, napping. Sometimes napping is beneficial, but most of the time it can be, something that can easily turn into 2 hours and waste time. It's important to avoid those kinds of activities because in the long run, you're not really going to remember it, are you? You don't tend to remember all the times you play those games or, eat that junk food or watch that show, right? Unless it was a really mind blowing show, in which case, that's something else. But you tend to remember memories of things that are more unique. You're not going to remember, if you look back on your life, oh, I played this game for 2 hours every day. It just ends up being a time waste in the long run, right? And we waste more time than we think we do. If you were to take accountability, you'll realize very quickly just how much time you waste. For me, I realized two of the main things I waste time on, showering and eating. You can easily get lost in the hot water just thinking about life, and you can end up, 30, 40 minutes in there when you really only need 10 or 20. And of course, having time alone to think is great and all, but you tend to, waste time even when you don't need to. When you doom scroll, for an hour or two a day, that easily eats up 1/24th of your day every single day. That's going to translate to 1/24th of your life if you learn to see it that way. Because when you waste time in a day, it's not just that day that you're affecting. You're going to do that activity over and over every single day for a year. And so something that's maybe 1/24th of your day, just an hour of doom scrolling, turns into 1/24th of your life. And 1/24th of your life is around 3 years. So you just waste 3 years on TikTok, or if TikTok is still around, or YouTube or Instagram. You can easily waste time that way. See, how you live your day is going to dictate how you live your life. Because what is life? But pretty much a day at a time. You're just living a day at a time. That's what your life is. And that's why it's so important to take account of your time and see how much time you're wasting. I've fallen into the trap too of thinking, there's not enough time today. I keep thinking, wow, time goes by so quickly, there's not enough time today. But if you were to take accountability, you'll realize very quickly that we waste a lot of time today. So that's one thing. And I think more than anything, one thing I've realized, I don't think it is that we fear time going by very quickly. It's more so we worry about wasted time. And to kind of prove this point, right, though it might be an extreme example, take a thought experiment. Would you rather live, let's say, 5 years doing everything you've wanted to do in your life, right? Everything you could have ever hoped for, dreamed, you accomplished in a very short time period. Or let's say you have the life you want, everything, you accomplish everything, but it's going to feel like it's a very short duration of time, versus you live a full life, you live 100 years, but you pretty much get nothing done, nothing that you wanted to get done in the end, right? I think most people would choose the former. They could. I think the saying goes, I'd rather live a day as a tiger or a lion rather than a lifetime as a gazelle. Something like that. And I think that's really the core point of it, right? It's not that we want necessarily more time, because at the end of the day, right, if we live 5 more years versus 60, 70, in the grand scale of things, it doesn't really matter at the end. What really matters is how much we get done, right? So that's the important part. Not worrying about how quickly time is passing, because it will accelerate. We're not in control of that, but we can control how much we do in a day, so that it feels like, from our point of view, it's not going as fast as it could have. When I started college, when I was 18, 19 years old, that first year at college really, it was completely different from everything else in high school, in my earlier years. And so even though I was older, right, time passes faster the older you are. When I was 18 years old, it felt like I was 18 for a very long time. Felt like I was 18 for a longer period of time than I was, even 11 years old. Even though when you're younger, time feels like it's slower. I found that when I was 18, 19, doing a bunch of new experiences, uh, it just made time feel slower in a sense. So if you can make the most of your year, the most of your day, keep track of how much time you're wasting, really being, how do you call it, not competitive, aggressive about using your time preciously, journaling what you've done, appreciating everything, looking at every single day as an adventure. You really can slow time down, but it's gonna take a lot of, it's not easy, really, but it's all we can do, right? So yeah, that's pretty much a thought I've had for a while. I was like, might as well get it out there. And this is one thing too for me. Something I've wanted to do for a while. Make a channel, put out videos out there, not for the views, but just something that I wanted to do. Something that, makes this day its own adventure. Something unique and special about it. So yeah, that's all I have to say. Thanks for listening.